So today we'll be making a couple more wizard pipes, really just to give myself an excuse to get back into woodworking, but also to try out some new exotic woods. This first wood that we have here is a purple heartwood, which is extremely tough and very hard, and I do not recommend working with it. So if you're planning on doing something similar, I would not go with that. But however, this other wood is called Badauk. It's an orange colored wood that is very nice to work with and came out looking really good. You can kind of see along the grain there what the color looks like once you have some oils on it. The wood that you see here I was able to pick up on sale at the local woodcraft store, and I was able to save a little bit of money there. The long thin boards in the top, I think those are used for making inlays or for cutting boards, but they work just fine for making stems and actually saves a step or two in the process. Some of this other material I got from Tandy's leather supply. However, I ultimately decided to go with a braided handle and discarded some of the stuff, and I'll just use it for future projects, so it's not a big deal. So our first step in the process is to draw out the body of the pipe. I just created a small grid here, that way the two pipes would be roughly the same size, but you could really just kind of freehand this. Now, there's nothing special about this body. I'm basically just creating a rounded pipe and keeping it nice and simple, giving myself a guide that I can take over to the bandsaw and just kind of trace out and cut. It's a nice rounded pipe. For demonstration purposes, I'm drawing in what the internals of the pipe will look like. So we have a very large chamber, branching off into a smaller chamber and an airway that would eventually connect into the stem. And this allows you to put in a filter in between the two chambers, and that would kind of prevent anything from falling into the airway leading to the stem, and did the same thing for the other piece of wood. And like any good project, you need to buy a brand new tool that you really don't need, but you kind of wanted secretly anyways. And we're going to use that tool to start cutting out the large blocks of wood and kind of getting close to the line of the pipe that we drew earlier. However, we're not trying to go right up against that line. We're just shaving this wood down to a more manageable size. It's about 3.5 inches thick on the Badauk, and that was just a little too thick for my scroll saw. So all we're doing here is just trying to get it down to a more manageable size. Now that we have these blocks cut to a manageable size, we're going to take them over to a belt sander, and this is how we're going to get pretty much most of the refined shape of these pipe bodies. Just by rotating them across the belt sander, we're just going to slowly add in some curvature to these bodies. I found this works a little bit better than doing something like a scroll saw, which is going to give us very straight, very angular cuts. This allows a lot more of an organic appearance to the pipes. Which would traditionally be done more through hand carving, but this process is a little bit faster using a belt sander. And this is what I was talking about at the beginning, where I was saying the purple heartwood is just too difficult to work with. The belt sander is not even removing the material very much, it's actually just burning the wood. And in the end, the purple heartwood took about 3 or 4 times longer than the Badauk wood did, so ultimately I wouldn't recommend it. After some time on the belt sander, the pipe bodies were starting to take shape. However, due to the limitations of the belt sander, we're going to need to do some handwork on this. So I'm going to take this over to the workbench, and we're going to have to pull out some wood rasps to really get down to the final shape of this pipe. And after some rasping, we'll have a pretty good pipe body. We'll take this over to the drill press to start taking out some of those internal chambers for the airways. And for the spot where the pipe and the stem connect, I'll take a drill bit and drill it all the way into those larger chambers I drilled earlier. So here are the pipe stems after we've taken them to the router table, and we've created a channel in the center of them. What we need to do is prepare the wood to allow it to bend. So you can see we've got this groove inside, and when we stack two of these together face to face, that'll create our airway. So to loosen up the fibers of the wood, I'm going to be placing these in a pan and pouring in some boiling water. I'll let them sit in there for 20 to 30 minutes, and that will soften the wood up. That will allow us to bend it, and then once it dries and all the moisture is gone, it'll retain that shape and give us a nice bend into the pipe. So I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I did make a couple of mistakes here. My biggest mistake on these stems is that I tried to go fast and just put some glue haphazardly. I really should have brushed this in with a paintbrush or something to make sure that I got perfect coverage. As you can see, I just kind of dotted this here. I also should have done glue on both sides. This created some weak points within the stem. Although after it cured, I was able to reclamp it with some more glue to ultimately fix it, but it just kind of created a few headaches there. And if you're curious, that pink rope in the center, I have that running through. That way, once I get these taped together, I can then use the rope to essentially ensure that there's no glue in that center channel by moving the rope back and forth. Once I get all of these taped together, next step will be taking it over to our clamp. So the next part's pretty simple. I'm just going to be drawing onto this board what I want the shape of the pipe stem to actually look like. It's a pretty rough drawing. It doesn't have to be perfect. Essentially, we'll cut this board along that line, place our stems inside of it, and then use clamps to press this together. That will hold the stems in place while they dry over maybe a 24-hour period. That lets all that moisture from earlier get out, and the stems will harden into the shape of this curve. And since we have about 24 hours to kill, we might as well go ahead and start doing some designs on these pipes. I wanted to give these pipes a feel of kind of like dueling pistols, but for wizards. So this orange pipe is going to be a fire pipe, and I'm drawing a little flame symbol here. And for the purple pipe, I will do an ice theme symbol, and that'll be kind of like a fire and ice. So the first step is to take your pencil, draw out the design that you're looking for, and then we're going to go into actually carving out these inlays. And you could fill those inlays in with, say, opal, which I've done in the past, and that would look probably really good, but it can get kind of pricey depending on how big these symbols are. So in my case, I decided to try out some epoxy resin, and I had okay results. It was my first attempt at doing so, and I made a few mistakes that you'll see in the future. If I were to do it another time, I could definitely make it a lot better. But, you know, it's a learning process, and it was fun either way. So the way I'm going to remove and carve out these inlays is by using a very thin chisel, and I'm basically just creating a little edge all the way around following the pencil line, and then on the opposite side just slowly removing material up to that line that I carved out, and then occasionally reversing the chisel to clear out anything that was inside of that. The smaller the chisel, the easier this is. It is time consuming, but go slow, it does turn out pretty nice. And then to get some of the sharper edges and just to clean up the center points and make everything kind of smooth, I just take a Dremel with some various carving bits and just get it to the point where I liked it. It doesn't have to be super deep, probably about 1 millimeter maybe 2 will do you. For the resin inlay, this actually is a really fun portion of the pipe, and probably the part that I enjoyed the most. What I'm doing is taking a UV activated resin. You can get it by the bottle, and you can see I've got a flashlight here. What I'm doing is I'm taking pipettes of various colors. I was hoping to make this look like a traditional flame where it goes from the red to the orange to the yellow. However, it kind of had mixed results, and going back, or what I would recommend, is probably just to stick with one color. And I would do a few drops, take my UV flashlight and shine it just like you can see here. That will cure the resin and harden it. You do have to be careful about shining your flashlight on your resin in the cups over there, because it will harden them very quickly and then you'll have to make more. Overall, I was pretty happy with how they turned out, although by trying to mix the different colors, it didn't work out as well as I thought it would, and I've got some ideas on how to do better on that, but that'll be for a future project. And you don't have to worry about it coming out of the lines. Here we're really going to be sanding this down, and that'll get rid of any of that overflow. Now that it's been about 24 hours, we can remove our stems from the clamps. And there were some problems that I talked about with the gluing in the beginning, so I had to go and re-glue and re-clamp these to get them perfect. And then from there, it's just sanding and getting everything ready. So I've got many different sanding tools and sanding grits available. And I'll just take this from about 300 grit all the way up to 3000 and add in some mineral oil just to give it a nice shine. And our last step here, we're just going to do a nice handle wrap. Because I knew I was going to be wrapping the handle, I didn't spend a lot of time creating a really perfect connection between the stem and the pipe body, just because it was going to get covered up anyway, so I didn't want to spend the time on it. I'm doing just a kind of a basic wrap where I alternate the thread over itself on each side, and then just kind of do that over and over. And I'm using a thread that has colors that kind of do a gradient pattern, and this just gives us a nice kind of color block all the way up. I'll do this for about 5, maybe 6 inches, and then I'll cut it off there. You can get this thread, I think I picked it up at Hobby Lobby for $3-4. They didn't have a wide color selection, so you may want to try and order some if you want to do something similar to this. And you just take your time, wrap it pretty tightly, and at the end of it you'll have a pretty nice handle. I'll do this to both pipes, and then we'll be done. And finally, just a quick disclaimer here, these pipes, although fully functional, are designed for high-level wizards. If you're a human, it may not be safe to smoke out of something like this, and I would recommend doing some further research on the matter before attempting to do so. In my case, since I'm not a high-level wizard, these are purely props and will be used more for decoration rather than actual utility. So be safe out there and do your research. Thanks for watching.